Hi guys, thanks for watching this video. Today we are working in my budget planner and we are doing some updates for the first week in October. So let's get right into it. I went over my October setup, so if you haven't seen that video, check it out. But today we are focusing on updating my spending for the week. Before we get into that, I just want to do a quick reminder. I do use a digital envelope budgeting system, which is basically just a system that mimics cash envelopes, but I do it, in a digital environment. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of reflect back on my digital envelope breakdown. At the beginning of the month, I wrote down all of the envelopes I plan to use. This month, I made a few adjustments actually when I did a reflection, but it's very similar. And again, I have a video going over how I did that. So that is still good to go. This is my actual budget, my actual monthly budget. And then, or I should say paycheck budget, because I do budget by paycheck. And then this is my area where I record my weekly expenses. So the first thing I want to do is check my receipts. Now, I briefly went over using the actual cash envelopes in alternative ways if you're doing digital cash envelope. And one of those ways that I mentioned was to actually use your envelopes to keep track of your receipts. And that's a great way you can still have a very tactile moment with the money that you're spending. Just by tracking your receipts on your envelopes. You don't have to put cash in here, just track your receipts. And that's what I decided I was going to do, because keeping track of your receipts is a good financial practice anyway. So I am using 3 envelopes to keep track of receipts. I am using one labeled receipts, and I'm just putting all of my receipts in there. I am using one for hobbies only because I want to really stay on top of my hobby spending. I don't have to use these envelopes to match all of my categories. And you'll see I don't have an envelope for all of my categories. I only have an envelope for those categories that I might want a little bit more attention on. And then I have an envelope, just bonus cash, because in my setup video, I talked about how sometimes you do run across cash for various reasons and you just need a place to kind of store it. So that's what this envelope is for. For example, someone gives you a birthday card with 20 bucks, I tend to just kind of keep that in my wallet. So I have a bonus cash envelope for that now, just to kind of keep track of that. I don't anticipate any money being in here, but maybe twice a year. But hey, you know how it is. Okay, so hobbies, that's the one I wanted to kind of keep track of or keep my eye on really closely. And then all of my other spending in my digital envelopes, the receipts will go just in this general receipt envelope. These envelopes are available in my shop. They are listed down below. Some of these come with the budget planner. If you pick up the budget planner printable, it does include, I believe, 8 envelopes that just kind of match the overall look and feel. And then each season I release a separate set that's available in my shop that's for the season. So this is part of the fall season. Okay, so let's take a look at my receipts and start recording them. Okay, let's take a look at the receipts in general. So in here, I actually didn't do much spending this week. I did a lot of spending at the end of September. So going into October, I didn't have that much to spend for this first paycheck. So I did have a little snack moment, and I had to go get some snacks. So don't judge. But that is a part of my groceries. So I am going to go ahead and write that down on my digital envelope tracker. So I did a Walmart. It was $9.69. And that is for my groceries category, and I believe this was the second. Okay, so then that's that receipt. I also went to Publix on the 1st. That was a little bit of a grocery, like an actual grocery store haul. But in Publix, I get digital receipts and I don't have the option. It was $46.93. I don't have the option to get it as a printed receipt. So I just wrote it on the back of this envelope. Another handy way to use your envelopes. So that's how I used it there. Let me take a look at hobbies. So I did make a few purchases this week. I went to Michael's and I spent $49.47 out of my digital envelope fund. And that was for my hobbies. Now, if you wanted to also keep track of that on the back, you could, but I'm choosing not to do that. I'm just using my envelopes just to store my receipts. I also went to Hobby Lobby and spent $14.22. I actually have a video about some of these hauls if you are interested. And let me get the dates for these. So, and this was 10/2. All right. So, this is actually a really good way to, this was a really good way to use your envelopes, you guys. And like I said, still get that really tactile feeling of, you know, like touching your money, because that's the benefit of cash envelopes that you do kind of lose with the digital envelope system, but you can replicate that, as you can see. So that's what I'm doing. And using these envelopes is new to my system. Keeping track of my receipts is new to my system, but it's really important, and I should have been doing it before because, like I said, it is just a good financial practice overall. This line at the top of your expense tracker, you can use that however you want. You can make an extra label. You can put your starting balance here. It's flexible. I am going to use it for my starting balance. For my digital envelopes. And so I started with a balance of $150 in my digital envelope account. So let me just pause really quick and say to you that when I'm making these purchases, I am making them out of my variable account, my variable envelope account. Okay, one account is dedicated for spending out of my digital envelopes, right? So you can come in here and make note of that if you need to remember it. I don't really need to remember that because I've been doing that all year, but that's where I'm spending out of. Instead of pulling actual money out of these envelopes, I'm still using my digital funds. That is why this is a digital envelope budgeting system. Okay, so keep that in mind. So this is out of my digital envelope account. I started with $150, and now I'm just going to update the running totals. I usually would do this as I go, but since this is the first week of me doing this process with you guys for the new quarter, I am kind of setting it up on camera with you. Okay. So the way I have determined that I need to manage my digital envelope funds for this month is that my first deposit into it was $150. That's why my starting deposit says $150. And then I'm just getting out my highlighters as I talk. But I do need to make an extra deposit when I get paid again. That's just how it's going to be. And that'll probably be at my next paycheck. So I am now coming in and highlighting my categories here. Again, I wouldn't really do this much on every video. It's just that since this is the first week, I thought it would be useful. Okay, and I am going to go ahead and put these back. I'm going to save one out for my next update. All right, so that is how I keep track of everything. If you don't want to use your envelopes, or not if you, but a part of this process is also to use your envelope trackers on the left-hand side, okay? This mimics, let me show you what happens back here. That's why I don't really want to keep track of all of my transactions back here on the back side of the envelope. I could, don't get me wrong, you definitely can. I prefer to keep track of mine in my actual planner. Again, digital envelope budgeting system. So, and I'll show you why that's helpful. So for groceries, I did Walmart and Publix. So I did Walmart. It was $9.69. I did Publix, and it was $46.93. And then I can now keep a running total. I'm going to round up 150 minus 10 just for my running totals. I see my actual total here for my closeout. And then I'll take $47. So that would leave me with what? 93. Okay, so I have $93 left in my grocery budget for this particular paycheck period. So to last me through the 21st, I have $93 left. This is why keeping track of it on your envelope worksheet is really, really important, because over here, you're just seeing your running total in your account, which relates to all of your spending. But on the actual envelope, you see how much money is left in that envelope. See how it works? This is how you execute on the digital budgeting system. Because if you were using cash, you would have an envelope that said groceries, and you could look on the back and see what your remaining balance is, or count the money. You can do the same thing in the digital system. You just keep track of your running total in the envelope that's provided each week if you're doing weekly budgeting, or each paycheck period if you're doing paycheck budgeting, or each month if you're doing monthly budgeting. So you are still doing the exact same thing as if you were having cash. You're just doing it in a digital system. So I can look at this and see I have $93 left in my grocery budget, in my grocery envelope, until the 21st. And I'm going to do the same thing for hobbies, because I had 2 hobby expenses. So I had Michael's, and it was $49.47, and I had Hobby Lobby at $14.22. So I'm gonna do the same thing. So I have about $35 left in my hobby envelope to get me through the 21st. And that should be okay, because I don't anticipate needing to buy anything else actually for the whole month. So we'll see how that goes. But that's how I use it. That's how I use my digital envelope. Now, keep in mind that for the new quarter and into 2026, I now split my expenses. I have one expense tracker for my digital envelopes, and I have one expense tracker for my main account. Because my bills and stuff come out of my main account. If you were doing a cash envelope system, you would have the same thing, except one of these would say cash instead of digital envelope, and the other would say main account or whatever. So for my main account, I already put my opening balance here, but I can do, just to be consistent, I'll list it here as well. And that's just to be consistent. But I did not have a ton of bills or other expenses to come out this week. This was actually technically a short week. I did have one charge for my domain, and that is actually in my business category, and it was only $1.10 actually. So that leaves me what? 102.29. And I'm just going to put main account here. Like I say, I don't have to enter that every time because I know it's coming from my main account. I only really use 2 accounts to execute my digital budgeting system. Well, 3 to be fair. I use my main account, which is where I pay my bills, do all my other spending that's not a part of my digital envelopes. Subscriptions and things like that come out. And then I have my digital cash envelope account, the spending account I use for that. And then I have my savings account that I use for my sinking funds envelopes. So those are the ones that I use to execute. And they're all digital. They're all at the same bank. It's just convenient. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do my highlight here. This is the color I use for my business expenses. And that one is updated as well. So this pretty much updates my weekly spending. It was a little bit longer this week because, like I said, rolling out this new digital envelope budgeting system, I'm spending a lot more time explaining the system and talking about it. And I think that's useful. I think it's beneficial. Let me know if you think it's beneficial. But yeah, I'm just really excited to keep working on this and to keep making adjustments and keep building on it. So this is my spending for the week. Not a ton of spending, primarily because the first was like halfway through the week, and all my bills and stuff came out the last week of September. So the first part of October feels a little wonky to me, but it is what it is. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, ask questions about how the system works, and I hope you have a happy week planning.